Hello and welcome to Magic is Real. I'm your host, Shannon. I'm a psychic medium. If you like this content, please would you do me a favor and leave comments below and like and subscribe if you feel called to do so. That is the way that you can support the podcast for free. It means more than you know. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now, but I really appreciate you being here regardless. I want to introduce today Shawna Ristic, who is a body worker and an intuitive healer who had a profound near death experience, and she is here to share her insights with us. Shauna has done so many interviews that I'm so honored that she has chosen to be here for mine as well. Shauna, welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you. It's good to be here with you and everybody.
Yes,
Having
uh,
me.
it's such a pleasure. Shauna, I'd love to start by you sharing a bit about yourself, who you are as a human being, what your background was like leading up to your spiritual awakening. And I know that you have been aware of your spiritual abilities since a very young age. So, what can you share a little bit about that for us?
Sure. Well, I grew up in the Midwest, where things were pretty boxed in as far as uh, spirituality was more religion and more Christian religion. Although my family was not necessarily religious, but I had a lot of interactions and a lot of spiritual interactions when I was a kid. I saw ghosts, or I would see, disincarnate spirits, doors shutting in my house, the stairs creaking like someone walking up and down. One time I remember my bed was behind the door and the door was open and I was kind of staring at it. I just sensed something was there. And then I see, and I'm like, do I have the courage to see it? And then I see these light fingers and this light being head kind of peek its head around, total, light being. And, it would always kind of startle me. And then get scared and kind of shut it down. Um, and then what happened to me. So I had a lot of these experiences, and I didn't know that other people didn't see them until I started talking to my friends, and then they're like, "I don't see that." But often when I would point it out to them, they would see it because all children are open to this when they're young, right? We come in open, and we're so much closer to the other side when we arrive here that it takes a while for that door to permanently shut, usually around the age of 5 or 6. And so and for me, what I've actually come to understand is that door didn't really ever fully close between the two sides. And my birth experience was actually a near death experience. I knew that I almost died when I was born, and I also felt like I had these weird attachment clingy issues. And I was asking the counsel at one point that I work with, and I'll tell you more about how that happened later. But I was like, what was that all about, that birth thing? Was that like just to make me have like issues with attachment or what, And they explained to me that when we're born, there's like a door that shuts between the two sides. But that for some of us, when especially if you have like a traumatic birth experience or something, for some of us, it was necessary that that door doesn't shut fully, so it stayed partially ajar to have that interaction between the two sides. And that's sort of what my experience was growing up. But as I got older, probably around fourth or fifth grade, um, I started really being curious about this. I'm like, why is, maybe this isn't a safe thing. Like I started kind of getting interested in ghost stories, and they're always framed in spookiness. And um, so I remember I sat my parents on the couch and I was like, listen, I think the house is haunted. I thought it was probably the house, not necessarily me. And they, being very rational people, said, oh, it's just the overactive imagination of a child. And I said, you just wait, you'll see. And at that moment, the doorbell started ringing by itself and the attic fan kicked on by itself. But of course, for them, the attic fan wasn't turned off all the way, and there was a short in the doorbell that just happened by chance to go off at that exact moment that I said that. Um, and I learned two things. I learned that one, there's always a rational explanation for everything. You can rationalize anything and make it totally make sense, and your world will be flat and it'll be what it is. But there's also a spiritual, magical side to everything, and a guidance. And is the world working with you or against you, perspective that you become a partner in. And um, that's real too. They're not mutually exclusive. And and I also realized as a little one or a younger one at that point that either I was crazy because I was just making this stuff up or inventing it or whatever they were saying, that it was my imagination and that meant it wasn't real. or I wasn't safe and there was something going on. And I got really afraid. And then maybe sometime later, I ended up, this was during the 80s when all those hacker flicks and all that scary movie stuff was really big, and The Exorcist came out. And I saw it for the first time and heard that it was supposed to be a true story, and it just freaked me out. And I thought, maybe that's what this is. And I did everything I could to shut that down. And here was my technique. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. And it would go away. I could just shut down. And then I kind of went forward like that through my childhood and just really, I was really connected to people, and I was able to really feel people and know, very empathic and could feel them emotionally, but really worked to shut down seeing and hearing non-physical things. And then when I was in high school, I really felt like I had shut a part of myself off, but I was scared still to open it up because I just didn't understand what the heck that was, and I'd created such a fear thing, from that childhood, kind of a stuck spot in my experience. And and then at that time too, I was modeling and I was starting to get into that industry, and I'd lost my job. I graduated high school and moved to the city, to Kansas City, and got some job in bridal consultant, started college, and not because I knew what I wanted to do with college, just because that's what you're supposed to do. And, I was more interested in my modeling career. And um, then I lost my job, and someone proposed this opportunity to work in the strip bar. So I started working in the strip bar. And I actually, really liked the expression. I liked the connection. I liked the movement. I really loved to be in body, but the stigma around it and the shame that went along with that career was really challenging. And it was pretty seedy. I mean, you had to deal with a lot of energies that were, and a lot of perspectives, men, women perspectives that were really not as life affirming as I would have liked. Um, so here I was with this sort of intuitive capacity that had kind of shut down, and this ability to so really empathically feel people. And in this bar where most of the people would come in there just to sit and talk to me and have a connection that way, many of them in. Um, and trying to get this career going and trying to step back into who I am as a woman. Now I'm 19, and trying to step into womanhood in this materialist world that feels totally kind of weird and foreign to me. Um, and clients started asking me, or customers started asking me to go on trips with them, and I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. This is all on the up and up. But then, I would go out to bars, or I would start trying to have relationships with people and partnerships, and I'd meet men, and they, once they found out what I did, were only interested in me as that anyway, or to sleep with me and then kind of disappear. And I was like, I'm putting up with this stuff at a bar, and I'm going to work, and I'm putting up with the same thing, and I'm getting paid for it. I'm like, maybe if I go on these trips, I'll have an opportunity to research some things, expand my horizons, and hey, at least I'm getting something out of it. These connections with men, and that was my rationalization for it all. And um, so I went on this trip with the first customer that had invited me, and I told him, "Hey, it's on the up and up. Only no funny business. I want my own room. We're not gonna be sleeping together, nothing like that." And he was, "Oh, I just want company. I'm just bored. I just want company." Okay, great, I'll go. And we went, and I saw some modeling agencies at the time. It was in Atlanta, and Atlanta was sort of an up-and-coming hub for the modeling industry at that point. So I was going to see some go-sees and things like that during the day. And then one evening, he calls me into his room, and it became really clear that he had other intentions. And without going into all the details, kind of got pushed to that point that he needed to have more than what he could have in the bar. And I sort of froze and was like, whoa, and kind of went out of body. And he had the grace to recognize that I wasn't into it and stopped and said, "Oh, you don't want this." And I was like, and he's like, "Go back to your room." I skedaddled back to my room, and I was like, "Whoa, what the heck, man?" I mean, I'm walking tightrope here. How far am I going to go in this? I had another trip planned for Christmas Day. This was probably early December, late November of 93. And I thought, if I really cross that boundary, because I know myself and I know that little by little I can get pushed into things and justify and rationalize because you can rationalize anything. And I knew that if I crossed that boundary and start having, more sexual relations for money or for whatever, that it would cause soul damage and that it would be really hard to come back from that. Yet I felt this sort of push-pull with it, and I was laying in my bed that night just kinda contemplating, like, "What am I doing here? Like, how far am I gonna go with this? And what about that next trip? Like, what do I want to happen?" And I'm like, "Well, let me just think about that. Let me just envision how I want it to go." And I couldn't envision it, and I was like, "Why can't I envision that trip?" And, well, let me just see, can I even see myself going to the airport? How do I want it to start? I can't imagine getting there. I couldn't even see myself going to the airport, and I thought, "Weird." And I kind of fell asleep with all this heavy on my mind, like, "What am I doing, and how far am I gonna go with this, and what kind of woman am I becoming?" And, all the shame around that, I mean, I'm a small Midwestern girl, there's a lot of strong opinions about sexuality and about womanhood and about a woman and a man and their interaction and who's responsible for what and all of that, right? So that's going on in my mind, and then this, I can't see myself going on this trip or even going to the airport, like, what's happening? And I fell asleep with that, and then in the middle of the night, I just woke up and I was like, and I said, I'm gonna be in a car accident, and it's gonna be lucky if I survive. And I just knew it. And then I thought, "Oh, no, 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 no. Self-fulfilling prophecy. You're gonna freak yourself out, and you're gonna make that happen, and just cancel that thought. That just no, throw that out of there." And I went back to sleep at night, and I really didn't think about it again. I just refused to let that enter into my field. And then flash forward Christmas Day of '93, and I had moved home with my parents a few months before because I was thinking about going back to college. At that point, I was realizing that I had a lot in me that needed to be communicated and expressed, and a lot I wanted to share, and a lot I felt, and it really, how I felt about humanity and the possibilities on this planet and people, and what we could be to each other. And um, I knew that I needed to have an education to really be able to make that come forward. Or I felt that way. I wasn't going to find it in a strip bar. And so um, I'd gone home. I was still working in the bar because once you start making that kind of money, it's hard to not make that kind of money. And and so it was Christmas Day, and my parents, we'd all come down early in the morning, and the Christmas presents were under the tree, and we all opened gifts and had our meal and, celebrated together, my brother and my parents. And then, since I had this trip that day, I went back upstairs to take a nap and to get ready and rest. And they left to go to my family's house, my extended family's house, a couple hours away. And when I woke up late, and I think I didn't set an alarm or something happened to the alarm. And I realized, oh my God, I gotta hurry. I hadn't even packed. I threw a bunch of things in a bag, and I threw the bag in the car and zoomed out of there. And I was getting up on the highway and going about 75. I think the speed limit was 65 at the time, but I was flying down the highway trying to just, thinking about I needed to call this guy and let him know I'm on my way. Don't give up on me. I'm going to be there. It's just I'm going to be right on time. So don't leave for the airport without me. And and at this point, it was those big cell phones were those big, they're like this big briefcase that had like even like a receiver on the end. Then it plugged into your cigarette lighter of the car, and that's what I had. So it was in the floorboard of the passenger side. And I thought, well, gosh, I need to take off my seatbelt so I can bend over and pick up that phone. But boy, let me go over this bridge and past this car, and then I'll do it. So I was over the bridge, and I'm, really in that forward mind of rushing over the bridge, just about past the car, and I take off my seatbelt and I bend over to pick up the cell phone. And as I came up, my car started to come close to hitting the other one. So I swerved to miss. Um, I've sat with a lot in meditation with that experience, just trying to remember what all had happened. I think what happened was that I thought I kind of fishtailed, and I um got a little startled, of course, and thought that I should stop maybe and recollect myself and then move on, which is when I first woke up consciously is what I thought had happened, but in fact, no. I think I fishtailed and then overcorrected and I nosedived into the median. And then my car flipped end over end across the median, which is about 2 car lanes wide, and then across the other 2 lanes of traffic. And they found me about 40 feet from the car, face down. Um, and the car behind me, by the grace of God, was a nurse. And the car from the other direction was also a nurse. So 2 nurses saw the accident and were immediately on the scene. Um, she later told me that she basically just held my airway open and tried to just keep me somehow alive with all the blood that was coming out. And there's some beautiful stories just about how people stopped and you know, they collected my day planner off the highway to figure out who I was. And it's just so ironic because I always called my day planner my life. Hey, where's my life? My life was scattered all over the highway and people stopped to collect it and find out who am I. Um, yeah. And this big burly truck driver stopped. She told me later, one of the nurses had just took this rag and like wiped my blood off of her face just so gently. And it's so amazing and so humbling to think that people come together like that, For me, this young, crazy stripper, crazy model, crazy who the heck am I, young Kansas girl, to pull it together and save me. And so I don't remember, consciously what happened that time. I've had some times, like I said, of meditating, and I've kind of remembered to drop back in the body and what it was like to be in the body and just this dead, lifeless, this is a pointless thing. There's nothing here. It doesn't function just to be in a dead body. Um, and so they then transported me from the accident. There was a trauma doc who happened to be there twice a month in my hometown. Um, and she happened to be there that day. Otherwise, they would have had to spend the extra 20 minutes to transfer me to Overland Park, which would have probably not made it, they said. But they transferred me to Ransom Memorial and they stabilized me, I guess, there. I was not in body. And then they life flighted me by helicopter to Research Medical Center in Kansas City. And I spent about a month in a coma there. And then came out of the coma little by little, and they transferred me to a neurological hospital in Gardner called Meadowbrook. And I spent, well, they predicted 4 to 6 months to rehab there. Um, and I did that in 4 weeks. So there was a real miraculous healing with this, which I'm so grateful for. And no repercussions, which is a grace of God as well. I basically, this is all the concrete material stuff that happened. I basically fractured my chin off. I have metal plates in my face now. I punctured my left lung, broke 6 ribs, 4 front and back, cracked my pelvis, broke my left ankle, had internal bleeding. So they did emergency surgery and I had ruptured my spleen. So they removed that. Head injuries. Mom said when she came to see me, they didn't even recognize me except for my collarbones and my feet, because my head was so swollen. I don't remember all that. This is all what I was told happened. Um, what I remember is waking up in this bright white light room and kind of opening my eyes, and it's really bright and really white. And maybe it was a hospital room. I don't know. I just remember it kind of glowed and it kind of was white, just luminescent. Luminescent's a good word for it. And there were 6 really tall light beams on either side. Now that I've come to understand them and know them better, I've understood also that they look very much like the same one that peeked around the door when I was a kiddo. But I didn't really realize that then. And I just remember looking up from them and they just helped me sit up, but I was sitting up out of my body. And then I was just sort of standing in the room with them. And I remember embracing them and hugging them and just feeling enveloped in this amazing love and this incredible okayness. And love is like not even a word to explain it because we have so many attachments and conditions attached to our love here in human form. But it's like everything is okay and you're okay. and you're completely and totally accepted. And everything you've done is completely and totally accepted. And none of it is judged. And it's all okay. Um, it felt really good. And things happen, a little bit. The communication happens a little bit telepathically. I don't I remember words, but I also hear words, think in words, and so that is sort of a main communication style for me. Um, but and then seeing them, and um, they sort of showed me what I'd done up to this point, and I don't remember a lot of it, except for what I really remember is noticing the interactions between myself and others, the way that things that I said or did impacted them. And I remember feeling not only what I was trying to convey and say at the time, but also feeling how my words landed on them and the shock or the pain that that would cause. Um, and that's a very humbling experience to realize what you've done to other people, even unintentionally. Um, Someone has asked me before, but isn't don't you remember the good stuff too? And yeah, probably it's just that that stuff doesn't stick.
Yeah.
Just like in life, we tend to remember the things that kind of caused us to contract or, tense up than the ones that were like, oh, that was really great.
Mhm.
Um, so I especially remember, there was a person I was really close to at the time, and he was sort of my best friend, but always wanted more. And we were always a little bit more, but I would never really commit to it because I was too devoted to my path. And just remember how that interaction and how much I hurt him and hadn't realized it. And it was very heartbreaking. And I sometimes wonder if that's not what religious traditions talk about when they talk about Judgment Day, that it's not really about being judged yourself, but it's that when we have this life review and we realize the way that we hurt others, even unintentionally, um, that creates such a contraction in your own heart that that feels like judgment, that that feels bad. But it's us judging ourselves, right? If so to speak, or feeling the the vibration that we were a part of, that we participated in creating. Um, so then they showed me, what I had come to do. And I wish I had like notes on that because that'd make life so much easier. But and then they showed, but it was sort of this understanding that I had offered to come as a sort of representation of the energy from this group of beings or something, or from this council that I've come to call them, that I'm the one who said, okay, I'll take on the body and I'll go down and I'll see what I can do, as a community, to bring this forward. And then it was like, okay, so what's possible from here? Because here's what I've done and here's what we came for. Now, is it possible to finish this little mission, or do I step out and like some other energy comes in, or like I walk in, or do we just, nix the whole thing? Because this was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be before being born and all that. I think we all get here and get a little shocked. Um, so, and they showed me how everything is connected here, how we're all connected. We're all in this boat together. We're all, here for the same reason. Maybe not the exact same reason. Like some people come to just play, and some people come to heal their family lineage, and some people may come to further their soul growth, or, numerous reasons why, personally people come, but we're all in this boat together on this planet as these spiritual beings who are connected, and we're connected into this matrix. It's kind of like they showed me an example of like looking out of a plane window at night over a city, and you see all the lights that are connected, and we're like each of those lights, and we're all networked into each other. And that's where I've come to understand that, like through thoughts and through feelings, that we contact and communicate with each other, and that the thoughts and feelings that we put forward then connect with those that can match that and bring that experience with that person closer to us. Or we, even from miles away, and send, prayers and love and blessings can affect the whole matrix. And so they showed me how it's all connected, and that when one light goes down, like if my light were to extinguish, that creates like a surge in the power grid, like in the system, and it can just go through and it can affect the lights of so many others. It can dim them. Some will go completely out, and that each of us has that impact on this planet and on this collective that we're a part of. Um, and interestingly, I discovered after I came out of the coma that there were churches from all over the place that had been sending me prayergrams. At that time, they would just write prayers on these little yellow slips of paper in their church, and then the church would mail them. And there were hundreds and hundreds of them from these people that I didn't even know, that were essentially sending up into the matrix this healing capacity for me to heal. I mean, I mean, wow, so touching, just to think about
Yeah.
that. Um, and so then the last thing I really remember with the council was that now I'm sitting in this group of 12 beings, all light beings, and they're all sort of debating whether I should come or go, um, or stay or come back. And I didn't really feel like I had a choice in that matter. I, by their insistence later, I have learned that I am a participant and a creator, and that I did choose, but I didn't feel that way when I first came back. I felt
Yeah.
like I was just sort of there, and they were choosing it. They were debating like what's possible, and and it didn't feel bad. It didn't feel like heavy. It just felt like, okay, what are we doing here? And that it wasn't just me who chose that, though, that there was a communal decision. And then next thing I know, I am starting to have wake up experiences. Um, I I remember opening my eyes, like waking up, and I'm laying on the side, on my side, but I just remember opening my eyes and seeing my friend sitting there in front of me and thinking, "Oh, it's Patrick." And I was trying to will him away because he was kind of dozing. I mean, at this point in ICU, you can only come in like one person every like 3 times a day. But although my parents said they camped in the waiting room for days and days for the whole 30 days, there was a whole family of my family there, extended family and my friend. And so they finally let him come in more often. They were just like, it's fine, come on in. And so Patrick was there, and I remember thinking, trying to will him awake, but I couldn't talk. Everything was mechanical now in my face. Um, and he opened his eyes and he was like, "Oh, Shauna, you're awake." And I remember, mumbling something, and I think he understood I wanted to know what happened. And he started talking, and I think he was telling me, and I don't know what he said. I couldn't take that in, but I could take in that love and like that vibration of okayness and that infinite love that's real, that I now knew was like the reality of it all. It was here too. That's like the foundation of everything. And that all of the rest of it just sort of is like, it just kind of grows out of it, the humans and experiences and, reality and material reality. But the foundation that it all rests on was that love. And I could feel it in the room. And it was just like this pregnant potentiality, this hum, like this thick um, substance that you could almost feel and walk through. And it was just pregnant in the room and warm. And I thought, wow, it's here. It's here too. And then I looked at him and I could see it in him too. Just like that light beam, but I could see it through his eyes. And you can see it in people's eyes. You can see right into them and see that love. And I could see that he is that as well. And I thought, okay, it's here. This is the reality. This is real, you know. And then I couldn't hold it anymore because coming back into body is not easy.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of effort, and holding consciousness. So bravo for everybody who's still awake and alive. It's not easy to be staying there. And so I just kind of fell back and dropped back into the darkness. Um, and I've learned later, through a hypnotherapy session, I re-experienced a lot of that. And it's really the best description I have is it's like falling back. It's like you just feel like you fall back and you're sort of suspended in space and you just drift back into this empty space of consciousness. but it's not empty. It's not like devoid of anything. It's because even in a vacuum, there's a little bit of energy left, right? It's that pregnant potentiality, and you are this spark of consciousness, of awareness that exists within it, and very much awake and alive. It's just awareness. And then the next memory I really have of waking up is they like to force me into PT. I don't know. I thought it was really silly because I'm like, I'm not even in there. Like, but they would strap me in a wheelchair and they'd put a strap here and they'd put a strap around my waist and then they'd wheel me. And I hated it because my body was so stiff. I felt like I was going to just slide right out under those straps and they'd just not realize it and roll right over me. But they wheeled me into PT and I remember them strapping me to these parallel bars. And it was such a funny thing because it was like my brain and my body could move, but it was a total Roboton. It was just like, you know, and I remember just being like kind of coming in and seeing through the eyes. And I remember just thinking, this is completely ridiculous. Like you got me strapped to this bar and you're making me walk and move. Like you can stimulate the neurons to do this, but like I'm not even in there. I was just thinking how like completely silly it was. But anyway, and then they strapped me back in the chair after PT. They wheeled me down the hallway back to my room. And I remember coming up upon this other person in a wheelchair, this woman, and she's being wheeled towards me. And I remember as she got closer, I remember thinking, wow, what the heck happened to her, man? She is messed up. And I'm like just totally enamored with this woman and just thinking, how bad, what did she do to herself? And then the closer and closer we got to it, I realized it was a mirror. And I thought, whoa, that's me. What did I do? Holy crap, what did I do? And then I got right back out of body. I was like, okay, I don't need to see that anymore. um, and then I think the next real thing started coming back consciously and really being more in body is the day that it was transfer day to the neurological hospital. I remember them putting me in the ambulance. I remember this EMT sitting there and talking to me the whole time, and I remember thinking that was kind of silly too. I was like, not like I can respond, I'm barely awake in here, like, why is she talking to me? Why did she just keep talking? She trying to keep me awake? What's going on? So I don't know. When you come back from something like that, there's absolutely no filters. We all develop these social filters. I mean, children don't have filters. Filters, they just say whatever, right? And we're all really authentically that way, right? Just whatever, whatever you experience inside kind of comes right out. And when you've had an NDE, or at least in my experience, all those filters that I built up, like from childhood up through, 19 years were like gone. So I may have been saying that to that lady. Why are you talking to me? I don't know. But things just come right out. So they took me to the neurological hospital, and I remember my bed was too small because I am 6 foot tall, and the bed was my feet were hitting the end of the bed. And I think everybody who came into that room heard about it because I had no filters. I couldn't hold it back. But then the next that evening, they took me into this great sardine can thing they have, and it's like they strap you into this chair, and then they lift you up, me, and then they set you down into this can of hot bubbly water. And it was the first time that I was able to be in like a bath for a whole month because my mom said there was tubes out of everything, but no way to put me in water. She begged them to just let her wash my hair, and sponge bath me. So water has always been my awakening thing. And so from that moment on, I think I really started coming back into body and just finally was able to relax in here and start to feel my body. But I must say it probably took about 7 years before I felt like I was fully like even in my legs. And even still, we have a challenge with that sometimes. Um, and I think that it probably took, well, it definitely took about 3 years to fully get on my path and to start to connect with the council from this side. I started going through a real depression after the accident. At first I was really in the bliss. I don't know, I'm sure, Shannon, you've had many spiritual experiences. And when you come out of those, you're in the bliss state and you're just, oh, and you're in that love space. And then after a few days, it's like the contraction settles back in, or you come back into material density and things get really heavy and there's a little depression, And this was like times 10, after an NDE. And I really, it hurts so bad to feel what we as humans, as part of this matrix, the energy we put in there towards each other, the things we do to each other. I mean, like war, like why? And even the war we create between ourselves on the highway, roadway. I mean, just the things that we do to each other that are so not loving and are just out of our fears and just out of our own frustrations. But I get it. But like the pain that we put into the matrix is so hard to deal with sometimes. It's so dense and it's so heavy and it's so not like that bliss state that we all strive for and we all want to be a part of, but we all struggle to even acknowledge sometimes. Um, and so it felt kind of very flipping back and forth. Sometimes they'd wake me up and I'd get this, this download of light would come in and I'd be totally awake and, blissed out and have this download of how it's all connected. Don't forget, it's all connected. And every person who comes into your life comes for a reason. And there's always a, part of that matrix. And it's always part of there to remind you of who you are and to remind them of who they are and to help you in your path. And, these downloads, and I'd be blissed out for a few days and then the contraction sets back in. And I finally just asked them, can we just not do that anymore? Because it's too painful. I'm starting to think about suicide. I'm driving my car and I'm like, I know it's a pretty effective way to get out of here. I've learned that. Just gotta do it a little differently or something. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, after what my family went through with me, I mean, they're a huge part of why I chose to come back. I know, because I just couldn't leave that kind of contractive ripple in that biological line in my family and in the people in the community. I just couldn't leave that bit of a contraction and do that to people. They showed me my brother, and like he may not ever even have relationships with women after that, just the contraction. I couldn't do it. And so um I started journaling and just to get all these feelings out because there was nobody I can talk to. I can't talk to my parents about, hey, I'm kind of thinking about checking out again. I couldn't really talk about that. Um, I didn't even feel like there was a lot of people I could talk about the bliss state to. I just felt really alone in the whole experience. It was pre-internet. I ran across some NDE books at the thrift store, but they were, I think, like Betty Eadie's book and stuff. But I purchased them, but when I started to read them, and a lot of the ones I ran across were more religious experiences and really wrapped it into Christianity, especially, which is fine that that was their experience, but it wasn't mine. And I didn't want to impose someone else's experience on my memories. And I also didn't want to forget my memories, by having to talk to people about it and having them rationalize it or dispute it because it always happened that way. Oh, this was just something you saw on the TV. That's why you thought that. And then that makes me kind of, it's like gaslighting, right? Which is our
Yeah.
popular term these days. It sort of creates this schism in your head. Like, what? Like, what? Like, I made that up, Like, as a kid, these experiences you're having are your imagination. It means you're making it up, which means it's not real. It's coming from you know. Um, so I didn't talk about it for a long time. I just kind of closed around it and I just journaled. And after a while, when I would journal, I noticed that you kind of go into this trance state of automatic writing where you just things are flowing. And once I got the flow going, it'd just come out and come out. But I would start to read it again after I was done, and I noticed that something had started answering me. And they would give me a response to my questions and they would help me understand what was going on with me. And they would help me understand what was happening. And that's how I met the council from this side. And I did that for years. And they taught me how to notice expansion versus contraction, how when you know you're on the right path or that they're guiding you and you find what is the truth, it will open you and draw you to it and expand you. There'll be a big yesness to it. And when it's not, it contracts you and pushes you away and creates tension in the body. And um, so they really taught me how to use the body like an antenna. Um, and that led me to some serendipitous experiences of meeting a massage therapist then who suggested I check out a massage school because I was miserable and had everything I'm supposed to want. You're supposed to have a job You're supposed to have a guy, a partnership. You're supposed to have a car, and then you should be good. Maybe go to school, do something to feel like you're progressing in your life, and you're supposed to be good here. And I wasn't. I was like, well, I got all these things, these boxes checked, and all these other humans tell me that they're going to make me be okay here. And why am I miserable? And she was like, maybe you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And she suggested the massage school, and I walked in, and there was a, oh, yes, this is where you're supposed to. And so did that for 2 years. After I did 2 years of my associate's degree, um, mostly because my goal was to prove doctors wrong. They said that I would never be able to live on my own again. I'd probably be mentally handicapped, that it'd be, I'd probably need assistance, in daily livings. I'd never be able to go back to school. This is what they told my parents. They didn't tell me that. Um, and so I was like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And that was sort of the goal of my life at that point. Um, and so I did my associates, and then I did massage school for 2 years, and quit my job and moved to Lawrence, Kansas, and enrolled myself at the University of Kansas. And on a whim, decided to swing by the honors program and see if that'd be a possibility. And they accepted me in the honors program. And I was like, hey, not bad for a head injury person. Hate that, doctors. And so then started my massage practice, and through some grace of God and serendipities, was pretty busy right away. My business just took off, and did that for a couple of years, and then ended up getting a degree in French because I was in school. And I was always going to be a body worker, so might as well do what I love, and I loved French. And then I moved to France for 4 years and did a master's degree in communication from a French university, uh, all in French. Bad for a head injury person.
Mm.
And then I ended up coming back home, and I learned a lot in France and really learned a lot about home. Um, Mostly because after my experience there, I felt like a lot of my journey was, what was that? I know it's here. How do I find it? Where is home here? Because that was home. That felt like home.
Right.
It's here. I saw it was here. How do I bring it back? And I kind of searched the world for it and realized it's here. It's always with you. You just have to drop in. And so came back and picked up my practice again, and I've been doing it ever since. 2015, we had a bunch of serendipity that brought us to Santa Cruz, California. Spirit was like, you got to go. It was very wobbly transition and very scary and very not a lot of stability, but it's all really good now. And yeah, that's the whole long story.
You told it so well. Thank you so much. You're a beautiful storyteller. And there's so much in there that's incredible. I don't even really have a question at this point because I think you kind of hit all the points that I would have asked. Just that again, this is another NDE experience story that is really affirming. It brings sort of all of them together in a way that makes so much sense about why we're here, why we choose to come here, what our missions kind of are, and how we each have different ones. But what really I loved especially was the fact that we're all connected in a way that we're all part of the same grid, we're all part of the same energy system, and that I am you and you are me. And yet when we come here, we create such division
Yeah,
and it's just overwhelming and it's depressing. It can get very scary, discouraging, upsetting, and really sad that we've gotten so far away from where we come from. I'm encouraged to see that some people are starting to get it and find their
a
way
lot
back
more.
to that,
A
right?
lot. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, tell me about that.
we had the '60s happen, where a lot of the gurus finally came to the West, and
Yeah.
sort of opened a lot of that for us, and it's been an integration point since then. Spirit has explained to me that a lot of what's going on right now with what seems like a lot of discord in our world is actually a product of those of us that have been doing the work, that have been really diving in. I mean, I've done years and years of meditation and of reading spiritual books, because I was like diving. There was nothing that mattered more than finding that here. And um, I'm not alone in that. I know you have. I know that a lot of us
Mhm.
have, right? And thanks to us, so it's like, you know, when you have something, when you're early on, especially in your spiritual experience, and like something's bugging you, or you feel like something's not right, or there's something kind of that wants to come forward that you maybe need to experience or remember, and you don't know what it is. And maybe you go to, or you have a sad experience or something, and you go to a retreat, or you do meditation, or you go see a healer, or you do something to help take you within to discover that part of yourself, and you come forward, and there's sort of this opening, wow, this kind of bliss moment, where you kind of move through it. And like I said, and you have like several days in it, but then something new seems to bubble up from the bottom, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, or sometimes it's something not new, and you're like, that again? Like,
Yeah.
really? Am I still working on that? Um, that's what's happening on the collective. That those of us that have been doing the work, we have cleared this space. We've started to clear consciousness. We've started to move us back because, in my opinion, we're all here trying to find our way home. We're all here because so many of us got stuck here and just stayed in the wheel of samsara, cycle of birth, death, rebirth, in this contraction, trying to liberate themselves from the contractions that they created. Like I saw in my life review, the contractions they created while they were here, whether it be in their own soul or whether it be in the soul of others. They're so busy stuck in that samsara that they've forgotten completely who they are. And I know and knew that was one thing when I woke up. The first thing I remembered, was that I came here to wake people up and remind them of who they are. And that was all that mattered. And getting that home back, knowing that that's here.
Yeah.
And um, I think that there's just a lot of fear, that we have been doing our work and we have cleared the space so that now those of us that have been really stuck in contraction and really stuck in the fear and really stuck in the mind that we have been made to believe is reality, more than that receptive openness soul self that is the true reality, right? We've been stuck in this thinking that keeps us stuck in this materialism that only this thing is real, this. um we've made space for them to be able to be liberated too, those of us that have been, you know
Mm, yeah.
and what's happening is it's just that there's more opening now, but the contractions bubbling up from the bottom.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought of this. It's kind of, but it's when you're talking about wanting to find your way home. And I think it resonates with me so much. Just these feelings I've had, the dreams that I have about never knowing where I fit in terms of where do I move, where do I live, where do I want to be. And every single dream I have every night of my life is me packing to go somewhere else and
Wow.
being confused about where I am and where do I live? Where do I need to live? Where's my home? And I always would wake up with this feeling of missing somebody, which I'd actually written about when I was in my 20s. Like, I feel like I wake up sometimes like gasping and going, I forgot my husband, or like I
Yeah.
forgot some, and I wasn't spiritual. So I just didn't know what I thought it was some dream thing. I kept thinking I left somebody behind. Oh my gosh, I forgot about my child, or I forgot about, and I chalked it up to, oh, it's probably my cat that died. Like I'm missing him. No, I really do feel like I was aware of other lives and aware of home. And I think that's why so many people, I mean, become drug addicts and alcoholics because we're trying to escape because they haven't learned coping school skills yet. And as someone that's been sober in a 12-step program for a very long time, not from drugs and alcohol, but even just that whole world, I see so many people that haven't found that yet. I wasn't spiritual either until I kind of started to delve into that world and realize that I was healing through that. And I know that a lot of people feel so much pain, they just don't know what to do. They don't know who they really are. They have been they've been abused, they've been traumatized, they've been through a lot of pain, and they've lost sight of who they are, and therefore this is real and life sucks. And that's so easy to want to. That's why we take ecstasy. That's why we want to take drugs to feel that
Open.
bliss.
Open.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're stuck in the contraction. We all go through it. I mean, even people who haven't had, abuse and trauma, we all
Yeah.
have those contracting moments in our life where we're like, this place sucks, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and to your point about your experience as a child, even, or with these dreams, I mean, I think there are so many of us who realize, for one, maybe it's been a while since we've been here and we're like, what the heck, this isn't what I expected. And sometimes I see a lot of clients, especially, who feel like they've sort of been kicked out of heaven. so to speak,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like you kind of agree to come here and then you're like, this isn't what I thought I was getting. And then you feel like I can't get home, like I'm stuck here. You know. Um, and so that's a thing too, right? Is feeling like you got kicked out and then it's hard to feel okay with letting yourself back in. Because it's just a skill of realizing that we're all connected and we can bring each other back in and that it's here. It's just a perspective shift away,
Mhm.
right? It's just that we've all been taught through intellectualism, which is totally valid and important on the planet, but we've all been taught that that's the only reality and that you have to think about it and figure it out. And that if it's happening in a thought way in your mind, then it must be your creation. It can't be something that you didn't. But where do thoughts come from, right?
Yeah, exactly. And tell me about the work that you do with your clients.
Hmm. Um, well, I do a lot of body work, a lot of fixing bodies. Um, First decade of my work, I did a lot of collaborating with rolfers and with chiropractors. And so I have a really good eye for structure. Because when I first came out of the NDE and I first went to massage school, I realized that a lot of people couldn't take in the woo woo part. And I also, grew up in a very rational, family. So I was more about anatomy and physiology and, structure, which I do think people really appreciate about me now because I do have a really good foundation in material, physical reality. And so for the first decade, I just focused mostly on that. But yet in sessions, I'd be working with someone and like information would come in, like about someone, ask them about Jason or I would see this like, sort of scene layout, and I'd be like, oh, I'm just kind of seeing this thing, this big bird flying in. Does that mean anything to you? Or um and so information would come, but it always seemed real sporadic and just sort of out of my control. But if I could sink in right, I would get information about the person. I would just know emotionally what was happening, or hey, did you have this happen in your childhood? Or hey, I think there's a stuck experience here that can't really be digested, and maybe there's something to look at and move through with that. So that was a lot of what I did for the first 10 years. I never hung a shingle. This is when I was working in Kansas. I never really hung a shingle out about the intuitive part. It just talked about the structural, fixing the body part. I have a good eye for looking at balance and okay, this is a holding point, this is a holding point. Um, and we go with that perspective. So some people aren't into the spiritual part at all. They just want me to fix their body. And some people come for the other stuff. And little by little, more and more people were coming for the other stuff, even though I never really talked about doing that. And I never really opened up about my NDE either. I just kind of closed down about it because for the reasons I explained. Um, and then um, when we moved to California in 2015, I remember sitting in a business class, a business development class, trying to figure out how I'm going to get things going here. And I asked this woman, I'm like, so this thing happened to me, this NDE, and like I never really talk about it to people, but like, should I talk about that here? Yes, people definitely want to know about. And it was a community that was really open to spirituality and to accepting that, and a time I think that we're more open to it. So that began my journey in California. And so now I work more consciously with the council and with tuning in purposely. I'm able to more have more able to purposely tune in and know how to navigate more with falling back into that receptive space and seeing what's really happening with them versus just moving in and fixing the body. And that can happen through touch, and also through visual with the person and energetic. But I also work a lot online and at distance. That started, especially with COVID. And when I started doing podcast interviews, people wanted to work with me. And so, and it started some in person too. It really started with a woman I worked with who was almost comatose, and her family had called to see if I could maybe communicate with her and see why she was still hanging on because they weren't sure they were going to be able to afford to keep her in the home she was in. And they knew she wasn't going to get well again. And they loved her and they wanted the best for her, but they didn't know what to do. And that experience that I could hear her and speak her words, even though she couldn't. And then when she realized I could do that, she completely woke up and was like, "Ugh." And I mean, she wasn't totally comatose; she was awake, but
Yeah.
she really came into body. And we had this beautiful exchange, a couple exchanges with this family through that. that showed me really how to hear and how to listen. Um, and at distance with someone, I can do it through Zoom or I can do it on the phone. I've realized that you tap into the matrix, so energy is not necessarily local. I don't necessarily need to be with the person. Doing energy work with the person and the intuitive work is a little bit different because their emotional interaction with me physically and feeling their physical energy can be a little bit, I have to kind of adjust uh, to my interpretations of that and my mind's interpretations of that, in addition to what's intuitively there. It's still a little bit different, but it works. And then at distance, so normally what I do when I connect in with someone at distance is I settle into their energy to begin with. I just first you have to know where you are. So I drop into my frequency, and then I go up into the matrix, and I kind of like to know where they're at in the world, just because there's a lot of people with the same name, and a name is a sound vibration that a person's always resonated with. So I've learned that using someone's name is a way to kind of get their cosmic address, so to speak. And so I'll go up into the matrix and then I'll find them. And I usually know there's just like a settling in when you find them. And then I drop into them and I kind of feel at first, what's it feel like to be with them? And I take notes. And then I kind of look at, it's a little shamanic thing I do that I read in a book that seemed to make sense. So I bow to the east and I look at what's sun rising on for them. What are they bringing to the session? What's coming in for them? I take some notes and then I bow to the south, and it's what's past experiences are influencing this dynamic, and I get information, take notes, and then to the west is what's the sun setting on, or where are they moving towards, or what often it's what are they releasing, or often it's like no, what do they need to bring in because they're depleted. But I get information about that, take notes, and then I go back to the north and I bow again, and I just kind of try to settle in with who's here helping them. Um, and that's always a challenging one because spiritual beings come in as energies, but then I'm like, and I'm oddly enough kind of not so great with names when it comes to spiritual beings because my mind's like, are you sure?
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
so I'll just get images of what's helping. And then that's what I do to prepare for a meeting online. And mostly because I don't like going in cold to things, I feel a little
Oh, me
nervous.
too. Yeah, totally. I
So
do a whole thing before readings. Just I don't even have to. I just do it for me.
yeah, because you
Yeah.
feel a little more like I can calm down.
Yes.
I don't have to be anxious.
Yeah.
And so then I go into the session and we can go with whatever came up for me that I was getting for them, or we can talk about whatever's coming up for them. It's their session. So, really, whatever unfolds, I consider that anything that comes from them in a session is valid and important information to the energy that we were picking up and into their healing process. And then I usually kind of connect in with the counselors that's going to and just give information and sort of see what they need to do to move forward in their lives. I tend to work with a lot of people who are stuck and who have who I work with a lot of people in transition. And
Yeah.
this seems to be what comes into my office, people moving from one stage of life to another, one job to another, one major center of identity to another, or some sort of transitions. Um, that's what I do online and intuitively over the phone. I'm able to record it both on the phone and through Zoom. And so I send that to them later so they can watch the session and remember what we did. I try to give people things that they can use to carry them forward in life. Um, I created a whole workshop series to try to help people learn how to be their own intuitive self. It's called Your Unique Vibration, which is the first workshop. And then the second workshop is Your Vibration and Other People. So, how do you be you and then navigate others? And then the third one is Your Vibration and the Non Physical. So, staying in your vibration and then navigating with the non physical world. And that's part of what will now be wrapped into the certification program that I'm working on the fourth one, which will be then now how do you read others and help them to do that and become like a teacher training. And that's what's coming up next year.
I'm
So
super excited about that. I really want to check that out myself.
thanks.
So, thank you for sharing everything that you did. You're just a really charming, wonderful, intelligent,
Thank you.
inspiring person, and I'm so happy that I got to spend time with you today. And I know that people are going to get so much out of what you shared on
Yeah,
so many
I hope
different
so.
levels. Yeah, I just think you're great, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thanks. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
important for people to realize that, that's why I say I hesitate to share that I was open as a kid because people think, oh, well, you came in that way, but I'm not that special.
Yeah.
but you are that special. You are every single one of us is that special. And we all have our gifts and we all have the things that we do well here, but we come for a reason. And and it's beautiful. I mean, you just have to drop in and be that and trust that, and so many people feel like they can't access their own guides or whatever. It's important to know that guides don't often just manifest in front of you and give you a download and tell you go do this, right?
Right.
It's you have to use this body as your antenna and the mind as your interpretation tool more than the mind as the one that blocks and tries to control, right?
I love that you shared that. We talked about it a little before we started recording, and I said, I'm so glad that you're expressing sharing that information and I said as a medium, I too am teaching workshops on
Mhm.
the same thing because I think people assume, oh well, she was born that way,
You
or
have gifts that nobody else has.
yeah, exactly. And yes, I didn't see things like you did. You had a specific connection with this particular, I don't know what you call it, group of
Counsel.
council. Oh yeah, that's yeah, with the council. And so that was something that they needed to show you when you were younger to say, hey, look, we're here. Don't forget who we are. We're staying connected so that you can do this work. And I think though that, yeah, I mean, I was always highly sensitive as a kid. I know that I had spiritual experiences, but I didn't know that's what they were when I was little. And so now I too think it's important to tell people that, yes, I'm a medium. You can come to me for a session and I'd love that. But also, I want to teach you to be able to do it as well. And I've said I could teach you in an hour. It's just a matter of practicing and practicing with other people so that you get feedback that, yes, you're
Right.
on the right
That
track. Cause
because
I could,
confirmation
yeah,
reinforces it, right? Yeah.
that's why I prefer to do mediumship over psychic because I can get immediate confirmation that I'm in there with that soul. Like you said, when I asked spirit, like a spirit guide, "What's your name?" I mean, I don't know if I made it up.
Right.
I
Because it's a
don't
vibration, you know?
it's a vibration. I have a spirit guide called Calliope, and I don't know if I'm right about that. I just asked for their name and I heard Calliope and I was like, that isn't a name that I would ever come up with on my own.
Right.
So I'm gonna
I
go
have
with that.
Ariella, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
but she always tells me, "You're not saying it quite right, but it's close enough."
Yeah, and then I had another one with a name that was something I was like, I don't even remember it now. But yeah, so it's good to be able to put that out to someone. They say, yeah, that makes total sense to me. That does resonate, and that's how we know we're on the right track, which is why
Mm,
you practice. But we all have the ability, and as you said to me earlier, it's just a matter of tuning into it. It's just a matter of paying attention. It's always there. We just don't realize it sounds like our own voice.
right, right. But there's a different I asked them once, I was like, "So how do I know
Yeah.
when it's you and when it's me?" And they said, "Well, silly, we use we and you use you or I." I was
Okay.
like,
Simple
"Well, that's
enough.
pretty logical." And I tried it.
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, we do this and we do that." And, you can do it, but it's not the same. It has a pushing forward feel to it when you try to purposely do the we thing instead of just listening to it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your sharing your time, your energy, and your bright, beautiful spirit. And if you want to work with Shauna, it's shaunaristic.com, yeah? And I'm
Mhm,
going to have it below, but it's SHAWNARISTIC
mhm.
dot com. There will be a link below so you can work with Shauna, get in touch with Shauna, and take her workshops.
Mm. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So many more things we could talk about. I
Oh,
really would have loved to talk about that whole sensitive nature of people coming in more sensitive these days and
I think
the
we do a
autistic
I think we
thing and the
follow
whole
up
other
with that.
thing.
I think we follow up
Yeah.
with that and do another
Yeah.
bonus episode, so I'm gonna reach out
Totally.
to you about that. Thanks again,
Okay.
Shawna Ristic.
Yeah. You're welcome. Great to be with you.
You too.